This is a project I made up to demonstrate some mock-up techniques for a rigid package. It's for this liquor bottle here in the center. This is the Michter's bottle that exists. I didn't design this bottle, so I just built this 3D file of the bottle so I could build this structure around it. So I'm not really deriving a lot of geometry from this. It has an oval bottom and it has a closure at a certain height and it's got a width and a depth. So it's basically just the geometry to fit inside of this. Otherwise, everything else is about the exterior structure. So this is a hinged box. It's going to have these two outer housings that hinge off of this base. So I created this 3D geometry. I have this nice curved shape on the outside. And I'm developing this 3D file with the intent of exporting drawings to make a foam core model, to make a mock-up of this design. This is a real situation. It could be a real situation where we want to develop this design. And before we actually go into a rigid case-bound structure and build it all, we want to prove out some of the geometry. And we'd like to share the design with the rest of the team. I'm also going to do renderings of this, which are going to look really nice and to be made out of the material. But more importantly, we want to show this design to the rest of the team and the client about its functionality. How big is it? How does it open? How is it really going to work? And how is it really going to support that bottle inside? That needs to be very, very secure and locked in. It's a relatively expensive product, so it needs to be secure. So this is a workflow process to do that. So I built all this here in Form Z and created this 3D file. So this is the open orientation of this. These two outer housings hinge close, and these two half oval sections come together and they frame that oval. So when it's closed, you can see inside that label and it secures the bottle inside. So the big part is how is all this pivoting going to work? So let's just go into wireframe and let's go to the top view. And I'm going to take the bottle out for a second. I have that on a separate layer so we can look at just the parts that we're working on. So this is now the top view of these two housings pulled apart. And then down here in the center with this oval in the middle, that oval in the middle is where the bottle is sitting. And then I have this other section out here. And I got this curve across the front, which is aesthetically very nice, but it's also very functional. So I'm just going to talk about, I have this little, let me select it, this little circle here. That represents the pin or the pivot point that's going to be a hole in the outer housing. And a pin will go through that and it will go into this curved slot I have right here, which is actually going to be in the floor of this part. So by having that on both sides, I can control how this is going to pivot open. The actual pivot point is right here where these two outer housings meet, right in the center where I have my cursor. That's where we're pivoting from. So all of this needed to be figured out. And then I'm going to mock this up in foam core so I can demonstrate this, how this geometry is going to work. Now we can take a look at how the assembly is going to work. So I've selected one of these outer housings, just one of them. Both of them will pivot in, but let's just do one to show how this is going to work. And I'm going to go to my rotate tool, and I'm going to select that pivot point, which is right here. And I'm going to come over and select the front of this housing. So as I pivot this, we can see that round circle is going to be traveling in that curve. That's how I created that curve point, by selecting this and bringing this to the front. So I have its endpoint starts here. Oops, it's selected. And it's going to rotate out along that area. And I want it to stop here. Now I'm stopping here because I'm doing 45 degrees per side, so I can end up with a 90-degree opening. So I do that on both sides, so it's symmetrical. So that's where that curve cut came from. And it also, I'm determining the location of where that pin is going to be mounted on this outside housing. So all that is happening all at the same time. So it's going to undo this. To rotate. I want to make sure that goes back to where I had it, and it does. And also this other little curved, this little half curve area, that's the part in the top, which is going to grab the neck of the bottle. So by figuring all that out, this should work. So that's how that part was figured out. So let's go back to interactive shader. So those are the pieces. And you can see this is the top housing part that is going to contain the bottle. So after I figured those pieces out, I wanted to take a look at what we had. So I'm also using this to communicate with vendors and to my client about what's happening. So here are the parts. So once I figured that out, these are the 4 parts that are going to create that structure. And the 2 half housings. These are identical. The 2 outer parts are identical. And the floor is the one unique piece that everything pivots off of. So once I figured that out, then I wanted to lay out these parts. Let's find my parts for mockup. So what I'm doing here is, let's go into wireframe. I took all of those pieces and I sort of just flattened them out and laid them out. So let's look at this from the front. And I put this outline around here. So this is like a paper size. I believe these are, have that center line. So these are 2 11-17 pages. So the reason I did that, it's easy for me to print. So I would just print them out and I tile it together. And all of this line work right here is all I need to make a foam core model of this design. So here I'm taking and extracting all of that and laying this out. And I will take this and I'll print this. I might print several of these so I can get all my details out of this. And it has all the dimensions of all the parts that I need. So if I use this as my shop drawing and build everything based on this, that bottle will fit and it should function. So that's the test to see how all this is going to work. So this is very different than some of the other designs I worked on. Some of the other ones for folding cartons and corrugated structures, we're developing die lines. Die lines are different because you're folding and you have to keep track of panels and how they interlock and how they glue to one another. This is very different. We're just building. This is sort of like building a piece of furniture. It's not really a die line. It's creating all of these panels and then gluing them together. So it's a little bit of a different workflow. But using the 3D program, it's the same kind of process. It's developing our 3D, making sure our products fit or our components fit, and then deriving the line work so we can fabricate these and build these. So this is still part of the design process. I'm not engineering this yet, or this isn't an engineering drawing. It's just to prove out a design. We will probably go back to the drawing board and make some modification. Maybe there's some size changes or aesthetic changes or how things are going to fit. So this is still part of the design process. That's why I like to use these mock-ups in all of these cases, handmade things that we can learn from. All right, so I'm going to print this out and I'm going to have another tutorial on how to build this mock-up out of foam core.